Voices to Hear.
Hi everyone and welcome to Voices to Hear podcast. This is Lucille and today I'm talking with Gorjan Jovanovski, the creator of AirCare, an app designed to find out about the changing levels of air pollution. Hello Gorjan, so it's very nice to have you here at Voices to Hear.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Now Gorjan, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and some of your background?
I am a software engineer by trade. I'm an eco-activist by heart. I try to use technology for good, especially when it comes to environmental issues and even more specifically when it comes down to fighting air pollution. I've been an activist against air pollution for the last 7-ish years and have been trying to figure out how to use technology to do exactly that.
You have developed an application. Can you tell us more about how you came up with this idea of developing this application?
So the idea behind AirCare, which is the name of the app, came way back in, I think it was the winter of 2014. I was a student then in the local university of computer science, and I was locked in my room. Outside it was cold. I was trying to figure out what to do. And I said, okay, I'll teach myself how to make mobile apps. We didn't have a course back then in that, but then you have YouTube, which has a bunch of videos. You can learn anything today at some point. I learned how to fry eggs on YouTube, so I know I can do anything, honest story. So I looked up a couple of tutorials on YouTube and figured out how to make an app. But the problem was I didn't want to make an app that would just say, I don't know, hi, my name is Gorjan, and that would be all. The idea is to make something a bit more useful. So I started digging around online, trying to understand, hey, what can I make? And I stumbled upon the website of the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning. And they had a section about air quality with some numbers which still to this day aren't displayed in their best format, which I didn't really understand. So I downloaded the numbers, I started playing around with them, ran a little algorithm to understand what they're saying, but I had a problem with my algorithm because it constantly kept telling me that air pollution was 20 times over EU limits. No matter how much I tried to fix the algorithm, it kept saying the same number. After a while, I kind of realized that there was no problem with the algorithm. The air outside my window was polluted 20 times over EU limits. And that kind of shocked me because not a lot of people were talking about this. Media attention was quite low. There were no protests on the streets, nothing on social media, because people simply didn't understand these numbers, which were displayed in a quite sophisticated and complex way. And that is where the idea of AirCare was born. To take all of this already existing data, but display it and show it in a much more understandable and simple way so that anyone that is completely not related to the field of environmental protection or science can understand how bad the air quality is outside.
As I've lived a couple of years in Asia, I know that when we look for information related to the environment or pollution, we can see a lot of different like AQI, I think, and such words, like which sounds weird to us. So you just wanted to simplify this and to make it more available and understandable.
Exactly.
How do you do this through the app?
The way that the app works is that we gather air quality information from multiple sources. We use government measuring stations that usually ministries or the local council would put up. We would use volunteer measuring stations, which are these low budget, less accurate, but a lot more in quantity measuring stations that people like you and me can set up in front of our windows. And then we use satellite data from the European Space Agency. We put it all together in the app and update it every single hour. So when you would open the app, it would hopefully detect your location and where you're at, find the closest data point to this location, and display not only in a numeric fashion, but like you said, in a color fashion, what the air quality is outside. So you don't even have to understand if 31 AQI is a good or bad number. If the app shows green, that means it's good. If it shows red, that means it's bad. We try to use a very simple, intuitive way of displaying this information. But we update it every hour on the hour. That's how it works.
So if the app is showing red, what people should do?
People should protest. Honestly. I mean, yeah, of course, the app will give you advice on close your windows or wear safety equipment outside. But as non-standard as it may sound, I'm not very much a fan of policies that come bottom up. So sure, riding your bike is great. Recycling is needed. All of these things are nice. But if these are not policies that are enforced from the government downward, then you and me can do as much bike riding as we want, but if 95% of the people would ride a diesel car, what difference are you and me going to make? So I think a lot of these things, when you live in a country where you see that the pollution is an enormous issue and it's being ignored by the local policymakers, the one important thing people should do is protest. Get out there, talk to your local politicians, spam them over email, go out on the street, do guerrilla actions, do something that would show your displeasure on the way that this issue is being handled.
And I think that is what happened in the Balkans actually after you have came up with this idea of creating the app.
Exactly. That was in the winter of 2015 when it initially launched in Macedonia. We had people that would simply gather out on the streets. We had huge protests. I think 4 or 5 of the biggest cities were blocked at one time from people protesting and demanding that the government take this much more seriously. And every country where AirCare has now expanded to has had a similar reaction, including Serbia, where if you actually look at the pictures of the Macedonian and the Serbian protests, they're ridiculously similar, meaning that we have the same problem and we have the same struggles. And AirCare is there as a tool to help you understand what you can do about this.
Do you think that then the situation from 2014 has improved in Macedonia particularly? I think it
has. You can look at an improvement from multiple ways. We know that public awareness is a lot higher than it used to be. A lot of people understand that we have a problem. A lot of people don't. I don't know. Me and my friend used to romanticize the smell of winter. We'd call it, oh, it smells like winter. It's nice. Then you realize, oh shit, it's smog. I mean, it's not something that you really want to smell. So a lot of people are much more aware about what it is, are much more aware on how they should be taking care of their own health, that they shouldn't be opening windows or walking their dogs when the air pollution is high, that they should be getting out of the city and trying to find something else. But also, it has started to put a lot of pressure, I think, on governments because they can no longer hide this issue or kind of sweep it under the rug and pretend it's not there. I hope that AirCare, with our visibility and with the efforts that we've been making, also helps those individuals inside the government institutions which want to see change but are being blocked to get more of a backing from people and say, hey, listen, look, all of these people are complaining. We really got to do something more serious about this. And I think I've seen baby steps. They're not huge, they're baby steps, but slowly I think we're going to start rolling down that hill towards a bit of a greener future, I'd say.
As an entrepreneur, what kind of challenges have you faced, especially at the beginning of your journey?
You know, when you make a business around green or eco topic, it's quite hard. It's quite hard because they don't tend to initially make a lot of money. That means they don't tend to attract investors that much. So you have to really rely on your own business skills, figuring out how to bootstrap a startup like AirCare in order to get enough traction, get enough users, get a momentum of revenue before you're able to get investment. We have been operating for 7 years now on bootstrapped money, so money that has been raised by us. And only now, even though AirCare has been technically a business for only 2 years when we decided to focus full-time on this. I used to work at Booking.com in Amsterdam. I lived there for 4 years, but I quit my job. I said, you know what, I don't want this anymore. I want to do something important. So I moved back, and this is when AirCare became my primary focus and not just a side project.
So at the beginning, you were both doing the app and your full-time job at Booking.com.
Yes, so the app was a side project. It was my baby. I like to take care of it, upgrade it, but it never was initially a business in itself. Mm-hmm. Only when I quit my job and started focusing full-time on AirCare did I start to think, okay, how can we make this a sustainable thing that can not only live on its own, but also have a team of people supporting it and still be able to pay the bills at the end of the day.
You are a software engineer, but you are not really into business, or at least you were not really into business at the beginning. So how did you deal with that?
You ask for help. you got to ask for help. I'm a software engineer. I'll make your server run great code. I'll make a fancy mobile app. But initially, I had no clue how to run a business. What do you do? How do you do marketing? Do you press boost post on Facebook? And is that marketing? Is that what it is? How do you use sales doing? What we did, and we actually had the great opportunity to be invited. I didn't even look it up myself. I got invited to one of the local accelerators here, startup accelerators called Civus. I think they're actually very close by to where we're recording this podcast. Civus offered us really a lot of help. It's one of several startup accelerator programs which are free for the startups. You don't pay anything to join that. You're there, you get a lot of mentorship help, you get taught a lot about all the aspects of running a business, you make great connections, and maybe even towards the end you might even get investment from someone who's interested in your business model. And this is where I started to really learn what it takes to run a startup, what it takes to run a business, and how you should be starting to think about literally every aspect of what your product is. It was no longer a mobile app. It was a service that had to be sustainable, that had to be monetized, and that still had to keep its original motto and impact and not lose it throughout the transformation from a project into a business.
And maybe in this service, you got to meet other entrepreneurs as well, and you got to exchange some ideas and on how to run a business.
Totally. You get to meet a lot of people because I think the startup community in Macedonia is amazing. There's this group technically it's called Startup Macedonia, and these guys really try to support the local community. They bring speakers from abroad, they bring experts from abroad, they try to bring investors, they create events. They are really the backbone support of the local startup community, and I highly encourage anybody who's looking into creating their own business, their own startup, to find their local startup community. Might that be here or in any other country, because they're everywhere. If we have them in our tiny little country, then definitely bigger countries have those as well. And only by asking for help and advice can you excel. We have this unfortunate thing that when I usually talk to people, they say, I have a great business idea, but I'm not going to tell anyone because they'll steal it. That is a terrible misconception. If you're hyped about an idea, if you're passionate about an idea, chances are 99%, 95% of the time, that even if you tell an idea to someone else and they do it, they'll fail because they're not the right person who's supposed to be leading this type of business. So I tell this to a lot of possible future entrepreneurs. Talk about your ideas. Share them to as many people. Get this feedback. You might think it's the best idea in the world. Turns out nobody's going to want to use it. And I've done that mistake a couple of times in the past with other startups that I've thought of starting and have failed. So you really have to engage the community, engage all of those support assets that are there. And I think, to me, that's the only way you can succeed.
I totally agree with that, and I think that most people don't want to share because they think that, as you say, they would steal the idea. But I think the number of people would actually implement that idea is extremely small. So it's, of course, better to share and get new ideas from others. So you were working in the Netherlands, and why did you decide to come back to Macedonia, where you are from? Because maybe in Western Europe there was a bigger community of eco-activists and so forth. So why did you decide to come to Skopje?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One, as an activist, I want to protest about things, and there was not a lot to protest about in Amsterdam. Like, come on, give me something. I want to find a problem that I can yell about. And things were working too well there. And I'm not a person that's suited to live in a country where everything works.
Yeah, but in France, we always find something to protest about.
There you go. Maybe I should have tried France and figure out how that works. But yeah, jokes aside, I mean, that was, of course, maybe a bit of the reason. One of the things was that I, of course, missed my home country. I miss the people here. I miss the culture here. I miss the food here. No offense to the Dutch, but they tend to usually just fry things, and that's about the cuisine that you would get there. I tend to miss a lot of that. I needed the weather as well. I couldn't get used to the rain in Amsterdam. But I think the most important thing for me was, after working for 4 years in a big company, I realized that's not the place for me. I can't do a 9 to 5. I can't work on a product that for me doesn't make the impact that I want to see in the world. I'm not saying that Booking.com is a bad product by all means. I still use it to this day to travel. But for me personally, I wanted to work on something that would make a sustainable change, because I think that now more than ever we need this. Otherwise it might be too late if we talk about this in 20, 30, 40 years from now. So realizing that and understanding that I already had some sort of a following, a bit of a voice back home because of all the activism that I've done previously, I said, I don't know, I don't want to regret this. I don't want to have a what if in my life. I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best. If I'm able to make positive change, that will be great. If not, I'll be very happy that I tried.
And was there any triggering factor that made you embark on this adventure and become an eco-activist?
There wasn't, I don't think there was a single trigger per se. As an activist, you kind of follow the political situation a lot, and to your dismay, it doesn't usually get a lot. It doesn't get better. So I don't think there was one moment, but I think it was a built-up frustration over time where you see that your activist work can only go as far to some limits, and then it's just not being heard anymore, or is being perceived. I don't know. For me, it was very weird that the local and central government would perceive the work of AirCare and my activism as a threat instead of an ally. I'm trying to help you guys figure out better ways of protecting the air. Politicians are not immune to the air. They don't have a special bottle of air that they breathe from. We all breathe the same air, and their families and their kids do too. So for me, it was kind of shocking to see that people would see activists and the work that we did as a threat rather than an ally on trying to figure out better policies. So I think it was just kind of the stress built up over time, which I said, you know what, no more. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to try to do the best that I can. And I think that, and of course, grandma's cooking was a key part in this. You don't have grandma's cooking back in the Netherlands.
True. So, according to you, for example, can I'm talking about businesses in general, but can profitability and sustainability coexist?
It's not a question of if it can exist. It is a statement of it must exist. I say it from two ways. From the more doomsday perspective way is that what I usually tell big corporations: if you don't figure out how to be sustainable, you won't have enough time on this earth to spend all the money you've made from being unsustainable. We won't. We're in a climate crisis. It's no longer a climate change, it's a crisis. From a different perspective, you can totally be sustainable. You can totally be a green company and still make profit. AirCare is just one example. We're finally a team of 5 people doing this work. So we found ways of being able to monetize all our work and all the amount of people using the app while still maintaining our mission and our goal to rid the world of air pollution. There's many other companies around the world that I know that have started going towards this trend. Even Booking.com at some point we're heading to this direction, at least while I was there. So it is no longer, again, a question of if, it's a statement of must. But one thing that companies need to very, very much avoid is doing fake, I would say, sustainability. Believing that, oh, look, I'm no longer going to be using paper straws in my, diesel factory and say I'm sustainable. It's not how it works. We got to look at the whole cycle. No matter what we do, if we're a factory, if we're a service, if we're from delivery, food delivery services to car manufacturers, you got to look at your whole cycle. Are you really sustainable in everything that you do? So it is very possible to do it. It is very possible to make a profit out of it. Does it take a little bit more work? Of course. But if we want to save our planet, we gotta. So that should not be an obstacle. It should be just part of the equation. And I highly recommend that people don't give up on the concept of eco and green, because it's just going to become more and more now supported. It's going to become more and more trendy. And I really hope that we see a lot more funds going towards startups of this nature.
By the way, you said that for you, it's more about putting pressure on the government to make things change. But do you think that there are things that we can do at an individual scale? We
can. It's not that we can't. The thing that worries me is that it's going to still be a small amount of people. I'm taking Macedonia as an example. Our education system does not teach us to be sustainable, does not teach us to be green. So people grow up thinking that throwing cigarette butts on the ground is a very natural thing. Oh, it's going to dissolve. When? In 100 years from now? You can do it from an individual level, but this is why I insist that this should be a top-down approach. If I throw a cigarette on the butt, there has to be a cop right around the corner to hit me with a $500 fine. And then I will start to think about, will I throw this? So if from an educational and from a very humanitarian perspective, I don't realize that I'm doing something wrong, the government has to be there to enforce the laws that already exist. So this is why I say, yes, I ride my bike. I try to ride my bike as much as possible. I recycle. I've even got recycling bins in my building installed so that other people in my building can recycle. I try to use as little waste as possible and bring reusable containers. I try to do a lot of things. But unless this becomes a very big trend, or unless this becomes mandatory from the government, I don't think we can make a change fast enough. So this is why I'm saying I'd rather see people put pressure on the government to make this a top-down change. And that way we can ensure that not only individuals, but companies, institutions, factories, everybody would be conforming to the same principle.
Enforce the law, but as well as educate kids in the schools as well, right?
Totally. I mean, the educational system needs to reform on this topic. I remember, and I was actually giving a talk to some of these high school professors yesterday. I remember when I was in high school, and we had this Day of the Tree. I'm not sure if it's an international Day of the Tree or something, or it's local, but we had this Day of the Tree where we would go and plant trees. But only, I think, a couple children per generation would be chosen to get on a bus and go plant trees with other children. Everyone else would use that day as a day off. So we didn't see that day as a great day for the environment and how I can contribute. We saw it as a day off from school. We don't have classes, so we can go chill and play video games. I think the educational system badly needs reform when it comes down to sustainability and to green things. If we want our children to understand, listen, it's something that needs to be part of your life. It's not a nice thing to do. It is part of your life. The way that we breathe, the way that we eat and drink water, it should be the same thing for sustainability. We need to live sustainably and think sustainably, breathe sustainably. So definitely educational system, teachers, even if you don't get support from ministries, be creative. The teachers are one of the most creative professions out there. Be creative. Find ways of educating the children, because if they don't get this education from you, chances are they won't get it from another place.
So I think that's a nice ending. Thank you very much, Gorjan, for this podcast.
No problem. Then thank you for the invite.
See you very soon.
Likewise.
Voices to hear.